Some updates on the stimulus package. President Trump today pushed for a bigger deal. He says he would accept a deal worth more than $2.2 trillion. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi softening on her stance. Over the weekend, she set a 48-hour deadline. That's end of today. Now she's saying if they want to vote on a bill by Election Day, a deal needs to be finalized by the end of this week. She says she's optimistic a deal could be reached. State and local aid and liability protection for businesses remain sticking points. But she says there are room for negotiation. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says if the White House and congressional Democrats reach a deal and it's passed by the House, the Senate would consider it. President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden are set to take part in their last one-on debate this week. But unlike the final debates in previous years, foreign policy will not be discussed. The Trump campaign is calling it an attempt to shield Joe Biden from questions about his alleged involvement in foreign corruption.
In her list of topics for the last debate, NBC's Kristen Welker included fighting COVID-19, American families, climate change, and national security, among others. But the topic of foreign policy was nowhere in sight. And now the Trump campaign has a bone to pick with the Commission on Presidential Debates, or CBD. In a two-page letter, Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien urged the CBD to reissue a set of topics with an emphasis on foreign policy. The letter also said the CBD was helping Joe Biden avoid conversations about his foreign policy record and new reports revealing his connection to corrupt foreign entities. In correspondence, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan said the mainstream media should be questioning Biden, but doubts it will happen.
I don't think they will. The mainstream press won't ask, and frankly, even if they did want to, they can't right now because Mr. Biden's kind of in hiding until the debate on Thursday night.
According to the Trump campaign, foreign policy has usually been the central topic for the final presidential debate in previous elections. Biden's campaign, however, said it was agreed months ago by all parties that the debate moderator, which is Kristen Welker, would choose the topics. They also said the Trump campaign is opposing the topics because the president is afraid to answer more questions about his virus response. The debate will take place in Nashville, Tennessee on October 22nd.
Due to a lingering cough, First Lady Melania Trump canceled a planned appearance at a Pennsylvania campaign earlier today. Her office said this was out of an abundance of caution as she recovers from the CCP virus. The update didn't say whether or not she'll attend the presidential debate on Thursday as planned. And Fox News has obtained documents that allegedly show Hunter Biden's signature on paperwork from the computer repair store where he reportedly dropped off a laptop containing incriminating emails. Other documents show that the FBI had knowledge of the laptop as early as December last year. One of the documents allegedly signed by Hunter is an $85 receipt for work done on 3 MacBook Pro laptops. Hunter's name also appears in the Bill 2 section of the document. The signature has not yet been verified as Hunter's. Another page shows what appear to be serial numbers for a laptop and hard drive taken in for repair. Fox News also obtained FBI documents that detail the FBI's interactions with the owner of the store, John Paul Mac Isaac. The documents show Mac Isaac was ordered to testify before Delaware's U.S. District Court in early December last year. So far, neither the FBI nor Delaware's U.S. Attorney's Office have publicly commented on the situation. And more emails regarding Hunter Biden's relations with China have been revealed. A report claims that Hunter's business partner may have helped secure meetings with senior White House officials and Chinese investors who were also Chinese regime officials.
Hunter's business associates may have helped arrange meetings between Chinese tycoons and high-level White House officials in the Obama administration. That's according to emails obtained by author Peter Schweitzer and seen by NTD's sister media, The Epoch Times. The delegation, called the China Entrepreneur Club, visited the U.S. back in November 2011. The group is composed of numerous billionaires who are also senior Communist Party officials. In an email from October 2011, an intermediary for the delegation made a request to Hunter's business partner, writing, "A tour of the White House and a meeting with a member of the Chief of Staff's office and John Kerry would be great." "This is China Inc.," he wrote of the club, explaining that the total income of the group's 44 members accounted for roughly 4% of China's gross domestic product. He called it a soft diplomacy play that could be very effective, adding that it would give Hunter's business partners good access to the Chinese delegation for any deal in the future. In a later email on November 11th, Hunter's business partner wrote, "Couldn't confirm this with Hunter on the line, but we got him his meeting at the White House Monday for the Chinese folks." And on November 14th, the day of the Chinese delegation meeting at the White House, another of Hunter's business partners wrote, "Archer got the Chinese guys all taken care of in D.C." The Chinese tycoons met with multiple senior officials during the meeting, including then Commerce Secretary John Bryson and then Undersecretary of State Robert Hormats. According to a document introducing members of the Chinese delegation, the group also met with then Vice President Joe Biden. The document was posted on the website of the Italian National Chamber of Commerce, but the alleged meeting was not recorded on the White House record. 2 years later, in 2013, Hunter's investment firm co-founded a private equity called BHR. It later became an early investor and stock owner in one of China's fastest-growing startups, DiDi Chuxing, the Chinese version of Uber. The leader of the delegation, Liu Chuanzhi, is also the father of the president of DiDi Chuxing. Liu served multiple terms as a representative of the Chinese Communist Party's National People's Congress. Hunter served as a director of BHR until last October. His lawyer said he didn't receive compensation for the position. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The Justice Department has charged Google for violating anti-competition laws. The lawsuit has bipartisan support, and the House Antitrust Subcommittee chairman says it's long overdue.
The Justice Department and 11 states have sued Google over an alleged search monopoly. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are praising the lawsuit. It alleges the tech giant used its power to preserve its monopoly. Senator Josh Hawley said in a statement after the filing, "Today's lawsuit is the most important antitrust case in a generation." He also said that Google has gathered and maintained its power through illegal means. We spoke to anti-competition specialist Mark Jamieson. He said the technological landscape has changed since 2013. That's when the DOJ previously investigated Google.
It appears what triggered the investigation is that Google has maintained its market shares in these different markets that it's in, and advertising has appeared to have grown in more importance.
He says that one of the reasons that Google has so much power is because they are good at what they do, and from a customer point of view, they deliver better than others.
So if we now attack this system, where Google is apparently a very effective player, all we do is decrease the efficiency of the system. And ultimately, that harms the consumers.
The suit against Google says that it has tried to maintain its status as a gatekeeper to the internet by using a number of interlocking businesses to shut out competitors, thereby securing itself as a monopoly. The DOJ says it uses billions of dollars to pay carriers, browsers, phone companies, and others to maintain Google as a default search engine. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And speaking of Google, Project Veritas has published a video taken by an undercover journalist. The video appears to show a Google program manager confirming that the search engine's results are skewed. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that.
Ritesh Lakkar, a technical program manager at Google, says search results can be skewed with money.
It's skewed by the owners and drivers of the other network. Like, so if I say, hey Google, here's that $2 billion, feed this data set of whenever Joe Biden is searched, you'll get these results.
This undercover video was published by Project Veritas, a nonprofit organization dedicated to investigating and exposing corruption in public and private institutions. Lakkar made his claim about skewed search results after the journalist said he saw bias in results between the two 2020 candidates. Searching Biden, he said, gets positive results. Searching President Trump, he said, gets the opposite. In another bit, Lakkar says companies are being selective in what they censor, which he says he doesn't agree with.
And on the other side, Trump says something, misinformation, you're going to delete that because it's illegal under whatever pretext. And if a Democratic leader says that, then you're going to leave it like that. You know?
We reached out to Google for comment, but they didn't get back to us before airtime. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
After meeting with Republican lawmakers, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell gave an update on the appointment of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. This comes after last week's intensive three-day confirmation hearing. McConnell said the Senate will vote on Barrett's confirmation on Monday, October 26th. The Senate Judiciary Committee will hold a vote this Thursday to advance Barrett's nomination to the Senate floor. On Monday, October 19th, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer tried to get the Senate to adjourn until after the election. His idea was rejected. A group of Republican senators are proposing a constitutional amendment called Keep 9. This would prevent Congress from adding or subtracting justices from the Supreme Court.
The senators also proposed a bill that would stop Democrats from passing any new court-packing laws in the Senate. This comes after Democratic officials threatened to expand the Supreme Court if Senate Republicans fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. According to a new Gallup poll, 51% of Americans want Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. In 1896, Congress first established that the Supreme Court would consist of 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. Court packing is when Congress expands the court to have more than 9 justices and has been an unpopular idea throughout history. The idea was first introduced in 1937 by Franklin D. Roosevelt so that the court would stop striking down some of his legislation. The current move to expand the court size may reshape the bench by adding liberal justices. After Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh were confirmed, many believe the Supreme Court has a conservative lean. This is even though Chief Justice John Roberts voted with his liberal colleagues on a number of controversial issues. Some, including the former vice president, claim that Republicans are packing the court right now by trying to get Barrett appointed as the 9th justice. These comments have received criticism for reimagining the definition of court packing, since the term does not refer to appointing justices within the framework of 9. Both Biden and Harris have repeatedly refused to provide their stances on the issue. Biden claimed his position on court packing would become clear before the election, but has yet to make a clear statement. Some states have already started casting their ballots through early election or mail-in voting. Most recently, Biden said while he's not a fan of the idea, he is open to considering what happens after Barrett's confirmation process. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Democrats win a victory in Pennsylvania. An extended deadline for counting mail-in ballots will remain in place. That's after the Supreme Court split down the middle over the issue. And Republicans see a silver lining in the swing state thanks to the new number of registered voters.
Thanks to a Supreme Court ruling, Pennsylvania will count its mail-in ballots up until November 6th, 3 days after the election, even if they don't have a postmark. The Supreme Court justices were divided 4-4 over a bid to overturn a ruling by the lower court to allow the extension. Because of the equal division caused by the vacant 9th seat that belonged to the late Justice Ginsburg, the lower court's ruling in favor of state Democrats stays in place. A victory for Democrats who, in the name of the pandemic, have been pushing for widespread mail-in voting and extensions to ensure all mailed ballots will be counted. Republicans, including Trump's campaign, have opposed extensions such as this one. They argue that it violates federal law that sets the date for Election Day, and that this type of decision constitutionally belongs to lawmakers, not the court. Yesterday was also the last day of voter registration in Pennsylvania. The state saw a record number of registrations, over 9 million out of a population of 13 million. More than 2.7 million have requested to vote by mail. According to state data, of the registered voters, 4.2 million are Democrats, 3.5 million are Republicans, around 900,000 are independents, and more than 400,000 are other party affiliates. Though Democrats have more registered voters, Republicans have registered more new voters in the state. Pennsylvania remains one of the most crucial battleground states. Trump won the state by less than 1 percentage point in 2016.
And the New York City Police Department is preparing for challenges the election may bring. The NYPD has vowed to protect the public's right to vote, even amid the possibility of protests and violence on Election Day. A synagogue is given a warning to either hold off on having a 10,000 guest wedding or be fined. But the synagogue calls it an unwarranted attack, saying that guest number was fabricated. New York City is set to deploy hundreds more NYPD officers 8 days before Election Day. The police chief said the department is not expecting skirmishes or large demonstrations, but he said they will be ready to respond if those occur. NTD's Kevin Hogan brings us more on the NYPD's preparations.
New York City is preparing for the election by placing an officer at each of the 88 early voting locations that will open Saturday.
And no matter when, whether it's election day, early, if anyone tries to interfere with people's right to vote, we will take action. That's why we have police officers on the scene. We are impartial, but we will not allow anyone to interfere with any American's right to come out and vote.
Chief Monahan said they do not expect this election to be any different from previous ones. The department said in the event of a protest, the police will facilitate it if it's peaceful and make arrests if there is violence or damage to property. The deputy commissioner for Intel said the FBI Cyber Division will run a command post in the background as the election is being closely guarded against cyber attacks.
We followed very closely reports of cyber activity that's been detected as suspicious in other states. We factor all of that into the intelligence picture, not in a passive way, but in a very active way, down to IP addresses, suspicious activity, and so on, that we load into our systems to guard against.
Commissioner Miller said a few weeks ago the department carried out a tabletop exercise discussing a range of possibilities. The exercise included the Board of Elections, NYPD Cyber Intel, the FBI, and NYC Cyber Command together in one place. It covered scenarios such as natural disasters, protests, violence, suspicious packages, and explosive devices. Mayor de Blasio says he's under the impression that there will be many peaceful protests surrounding the election and that the police are responsible for handling the situation.
The NYPD's job is to make sure that all of that is handled peacefully and honored. Unquestionably, they're up to that job and they believe in that job. And my job is to make sure that happens, and then if any individuals do the wrong thing, there has to be consequences for them.
The department mentioned it has been policing elections for 175 years and assured that it will keep the public safe while voting. Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York.
Over the weekend, New York's health department warned a synagogue. They say it was expected to have 10,000 guests for a wedding. But the Brooklyn Synagogue secretary says that number was completely fabricated and that the government never reached out to them beforehand. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from Brooklyn.
In a statement, the Brooklyn Synagogue expected to hold a wedding with 10,000 guests, said they would only invite close family members. That decision came after the state's health department warned the synagogue, ordering them to hold off or get fined up to $10,000 a day for violating that order.
We had received the suggestion that that was happening, did an investigation, found that it was likelihood that it was true. There was a large wedding planned that would violate the gathering rules.
The governor didn't go into what evidence they found. We contacted the health department, but they didn't get back to us. So we're here at the synagogue, and Governor Cuomo said they found reason to believe that up to 10,000 people would attend a wedding here, but the synagogue secretary told us a different story. He said that they can't even take in that many people at the synagogue. The secretary, Chaim Jacobowitz, told us in an interview that the 10,000 guest number was fabricated and that the governor didn't reach out to them. In a previous statement, he called the governor's order an unwarranted attack detached from the facts. According to Jacobowitz, usually about 2,000 people show up for weddings of the Grand Rabbi's family. But because of the CCP virus, he says the wedding would have been held differently with rules in place like mask wearing and social distancing. We did find what appears to be an invitation to the wedding on Twitter, which does say it would be held in the presence of tens of thousands. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
A group of New York gym owners say that they've had enough. They're filing a class action lawsuit against the state's governor, aiming to overturn his continued emergency executive orders. That's so businesses can reopen.
The New York Fitness Coalition is filing a class action lawsuit against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Coalition founder Charlie Casera says the suit aims to remove the governor's virus-related executive order and mandates across the state. Casera described the lockdown's consequences on gym owners.
Looking at overall, you're probably talking a 60% closure rate come December. You'll have 6 to 7 months of back rent, power bills, gas bills, you name it, we got it. And then on top of that, we still have our own personal debt. On a mortgage, or you have an apartment, your car, you're paying for kids' colleges, or whatever it may be. So financially, it's absolutely devastating.
New York is only allowed to open gyms at about 30% capacity. Cassera noted that the governor hasn't announced guidelines or dates for when the state's gyms can fully open.
More than gyms. So this is now gyms, restaurants, parents, teachers, sports programs, colleges, any concerned New Yorker who no longer wants to deal with the prospect of the city just not bouncing back, because that's what's going to happen.
One New York gym owner says despite strict cleaning protocols, customers are scared to come back.
I think even if the governor said, hey, you guys are 100%, we still lost that business. Most people are doing their own thing. Most people got creative and went virtually or went outside or just training people out of their own homes.
Leon says business is down 80%.
Months, weeks, weeks. I mean, every day, every week, you know, we got payroll, we got rent, we got light. Every week is a struggle.
Operations director at Belleon Body Gym, Mena Overa, says the capacity limit isn't the issue. That's because her gym is client-driven.
It's the protocols and it's where we are as a state in our numbers. It's about people looking at their health and wellness.
The New York City Fitness Coalition will be finalizing their lawsuit this week. Belleon Body will not be joining the lawsuit, but they 100% support their cause. David Zhang, NTD News, New York.
Rapper 50 Cent is endorsing President Trump. He surprised fans in a couple of tweets, one last night and one again today. The rapper tweeted a video from Fox News talking about his endorsement and a joke by Trump's senior advisor that under Joe Biden, 50 Cent would become 20 Cent. The Democratic candidate plans to increase taxes on households making more than $400,000. 50 Cent wrote that 62% is a very, very bad idea, referring to his tweet from the night before. That pointed to a new analysis by the Tax Foundation saying the top tax rate in California and New York would be 62% under Biden. In that tweet, 50 Cent said, quote, "Vote for Trump." Now we turn to a professor in China who's facing a life-threatening dilemma. He's been diagnosed with cancer and cannot afford his treatment. In an effort to raise money, he set up a crowdfunding campaign. But Chinese authorities shut down his campaign, fearing it would reflect badly on the communist system. That's despite this man having dedicated his entire career to preaching the superiority of that doctrine.
Wuhan University professor Tao Yaxiong broadcasts his plea for help online. Tao is a dedicated professor of Marxism. He teaches students about the superiority of communism in his daily lectures. He's taught in Confucius Institutes, which are partnerships between universities and schools in China and abroad, often known to promote communist principles and ideology. And he is a strong supporter of China's Belt and Road Initiative, an infrastructure program that sends funding to poorer countries while also expanding China's influence and control overseas. According to his crowdfunding campaign, Tao claimed to have already spent over $60,000 for his cancer treatment, his life savings. But now the cancer has spread to his brain, and a huge sum of money is needed for further treatment. His plight sparked a strong response after it began circulating online and in the media. One netizen commented online, writing, "If a university professor cannot even afford treatment when he's seriously ill, think about what it's like for lower-class people. That's horrible." That's as a Twitter user asserted that Tao was falling into the grave he dug for others. He called Tao a liar for lecturing about the superiority of communism. Tao has since been silenced by authorities. According to Radio Free Asia, local officials are suspected of pressuring Tao and his family through his job at Wuhan University. Even Tao's co-workers reportedly keep their distance from him now. The report says Chinese authorities fear people will question the so-called superiority of the communist system if they hear about Tao's situation. In a twist, another university professor named Mr. Zhou says Tao doesn't even believe in the Marxist theory he teaches. Zhou explained Tao is made to live in the institutional environment and so is forced to defend it, but only does so to make a living. Zhou called Tao's situation tragic. He said in the communist system, the more aware a person is, the more painful the situation is to endure. NTD News.
And in Thailand, protests against the government continue, and demonstrators are taking on a new technique to coordinate, one that was recently used by protesters in Hong Kong.
Thai protesters are using a whole new sign language to coordinate among crowds of thousands of people at demonstrations against the government. If hands point above the head, it means they need umbrellas. Hands held over the head means they need helmets, and hands held across the chest means they have enough supplies.
So for water, this is how we do it. This is the sign for goggles. This is helmet. We also pass down messages by shouting Chinese whispers from the front to the back of the crowd or until it reaches the destination.
The Thai government has banned political gatherings and arrested many of the protest leaders, but people are still gathering.
I think everyone is well educated and they learn how to survive without the leaders, how we should communicate so that the protests can be carried out in an orderly way.
3 months of protests in Thailand have sought to bring down the prime minister, a former junta leader, and to curb the powers of the monarchy. Some of the words in the Thai hand sign vocabulary are the same as those used by protesters in Hong Kong last year. In the summer of 2019, Hong Kong protesters first used such hand signs while protesting for their 5 demands that helped get essential materials to the front lines of the protests. According to a Hong Kong newspaper, people were arrested for delivering such goods to the protests.
Still to come, a recent study shows people's concern over the CCP virus has prompted gun sales to surge in California. Many claim they did so in fear of violence following the pandemic. And NASA decides to build a cell phone network in space. Can you guess who's in charge and where it will be? Find out more after the break. Do you remember what you did when the first virus cases reached your area? Did you stock up on food or take other precautions? Well, a new study says over 100,000 people in California went out and bought guns.
A new study has found that concerns about the pandemic drove a surge in gun sales in California. Researchers at the University of California wanted to see how the virus outbreak impacted people's tendency to worry about violence and how this affected gun and ammunition sales. The researchers found that around 110,000 Californians who recently bought guns did so due to pandemic-related worries. Around 47,000 of these were first-time gun buyers. The study also found that around 1.2% of California's estimated 4.2 million gun owners started to store their firearms loaded and not locked up due to pandemic-related concerns. People who bought firearms during the outbreak cited concerns over lawlessness, prisoner releases, the government going too far, government collapse, as well as gun stores closing. The researchers also found that concern about violence grew due to the pandemic. The percentage of people who said they were somewhat or very worried about violence grew by around 4 percentage points amid the outbreak.
Qualcomm says it will produce chips for 5G telecom networking gear. This is the first American entry into a market dominated by Europe and China. Qualcomm is already the world's largest supplier of phone chips, but the market for 5G base stations and other infrastructure has been dominated by Nokia, Ericsson, and previously Huawei. Rather than compete with them, Qualcomm aims to become their chip supplier. Qualcomm wants to play a central role in the future expansion of 5G, like how its combination with Android did well in the smartphone market. And Swedish regulators have banned the use of 5G equipment from China's Huawei and ZTE. They were briefed by the nation's security services, who said China is one of the biggest threats against Sweden.
Sweden's regulators on Tuesday banned the use of telecom equipment from China's Huawei and ZTE in its 5G network, occurring just a month before the country is to auction off its 5G spectrum. The Swedish Post and Telecom Authority PTS said the move follows assessments by the Swedish Armed Forces and Security Service. European governments have been reviewing the role of Chinese telecoms companies. This followed a similar action by the US citing a potential threat to national security. Chinese companies and citizens must by law aid the Chinese Communist regime in intelligence gathering. Sweden's security service called China one of the biggest threats against Sweden. The ban is likely to benefit rival telecom equipment makers Ericsson based in Sweden and Finland's Nokia. PTS has approved the participation of Swedish companies High 3G Access, Net4 Mobility, Telia Sverige and Teracom. They will tender access to the 3.5 GHz and the 2.3 GHz frequencies, key bands critical for the rollout of 5G. PTS said companies taking part in the auction must remove Huawei and ZTE gear from existing central functions by January 1st, 2025.
Do you struggle to get a phone signal at home on planet Earth? Maybe you'll have better luck on the moon. That's Nokia's newest challenge.
Nokia is set to boldly go where no mobile network has gone before. NASA has picked the Finnish telecoms firm to build the first system on the moon. It's part of the space agency's plan to return humans to the Earth satellite by 2024, as shown in NASA videos. The plan is to start building long-term settlements there under its Artemis program. Nokia says it will have a wireless broadband system up and running on the moon in late 2022, ahead of any astronaut arrivals. It will partner with Texas-based Intuitive Machines to get its equipment there. After delivery, the network will set itself up automatically. Among other things, Nokia says it will enable colonists to navigate, control lunar rovers, and stream high-definition video. In the airless emptiness of the moon, astronauts hopefully won't struggle to get a good signal.
A Danish man previously sentenced to life in prison is being returned to jail after he managed to escape for a short but tension-filled moment.
Peter Madsen briefly escaped a Danish prison on Tuesday before being recaptured. According to the police, he held a prison employee hostage with an object resembling a gun as he forced his way out.
He was at large for a relatively short time before we got him. In connection with the arrest, he throws something away that we thought looked like a pistol-like object.
He added that the object most likely wasn't a real gun. Madsen murdered Swedish journalist Kim Wall in a self-built submarine in Copenhagen Harbor in 2017. He was sentenced to life in prison in 2018. Madsen was arrested less than half a mile from the prison, 5 minutes after police were alerted. When police found him, Madsen had forced his way into a van. He was pulled out by officers and handcuffed. During the arrest, officers noticed a belt around his torso and moved to a safe distance, suspecting it might contain explosives.
There's nothing that suggests that there were explosives in the belt, but we have taken it to investigate further. But we think it was a dummy bomb, but one that resembled a bomb belt well.
No employees at the prison nor any police officers were injured during the escape or arrest.
Up next, the UK and the US expose Russia's military intelligence service of hacking Olympic Games. Russia was banned from the world's top sporting events over doping offenses. And a Berlin court has overturned a government curfew on bars and restaurants, but some restaurant owners are still not happy and call the verdict a farce. Why? Find out more after the break. Over to Europe, where Russia is accused of hacking the 2018 Olympics, as well as this year's Tokyo Summer Olympics before it was cancelled. Officials had to cut off and replace all the affected computers to prevent a malware from spreading. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow brings us more news from Europe.
Thanks. Welcome to the UK newsroom, bringing UK and European news. Britain and the United States condemn what they say is a litany of malicious cyber attacks orchestrated by GRU, Russia's military intelligence service. US Justice Department says the unit played key roles in attacks against the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and others from 2015 to 2019. British officials say the GRU conducted cyber reconnaissance operations against organizers of the 2020 Tokyo Games. At the 2018 Winter Olympics opening ceremony in South Korea, the hacks compromised hundreds of computers, took down internet access and disrupted broadcast feeds. Russia was banned from the world's top sporting events for 4 years in December over widespread doping offences. In France, authorities vow to crack down on groups promoting radical Islam. As investigations into the beheading of a teacher continues, our France correspondent David Vivez has the story.
Authorities say the murder and beheading of a teacher by a suspected Islamist extremist show involvement of several people from Muslim movements in France. History teacher Samuel Paty showed caricatures of the Muslim prophet Muhammad in class. The class was on freedom of speech. Videos asking for the teacher to be punished were circulated on social media. One of the videos was broadcasted in a mosque near Paris. France ordered a 6-month shutdown of the mosque, saying it is for the purpose of preventing acts of terrorism. Tributes continue to pour in for Paty, putting pressure on the government to act against Islamist terrorism. But it's complicated. The Director of Studies, Alexander Delval, says 3 organizations circulated the video.
They relayed a video giving his name, first name, address, and calling for his lynching. Internet users relayed this video calling for the murder, but the Islamist organizations did not withdraw it after all that, so there was complicity on their part.
He also says the terrorist Islamist networks in France and in Europe are organized by 2 movements, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists. According to an investigation, there are at least 150 mosques led by the Muslim Brotherhood or Salafists movements that teach radical Islam in France. But for Delval, there is little chance for them to be closed.
It's important to understand that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists are both based on the same radical movement, the Ambalites. This is not a movement that is a part of Islam. It's not just a radical branch. It is the movement that exists now in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the same movement that rules over holy places. It's very difficult to forbid them. Otherwise, it's the same as challenging Saudi Arabia and Islam holy places themselves. Our political leaders have no courage to ask this movement to reform itself in France.
A national tribute for Samuel Paty will be held on Wednesday the 20th.
Pre-flight COVID-19 tests have been launched at London's Heathrow Airport, with results in around an hour.
The tests are being run with the airport, British Airways, Virgin Atlantic and Cathay Pacific. It's an effort to reopen restricted routes for passengers and boost business for airlines.
First thing is it allows you to get in, so it gives you certainty before you've left. You know, there's also the rules around it. So actually flying from here to Hong Kong, you have to have a test before you've boarded the plane.
Collinson use a so-called LAMP test that can produce results in around 60 minutes, much faster than the PCR tests in use, which can take more than a day to be processed in labs.
I think what we'll see over the coming months is we'll see centres like this in airports around the world. We'll start to work with bilateral agreements so that every country can start to understand and approve testing on departure areas from accredited labs.
Evans said that he expected outbound testing to be rolled out for Italy and other European destinations in the coming days and weeks. He predicted that it could become as routine at airports as security screenings.
A Berlin court overturned a national government-imposed antivirus measure, suspending a citywide curfew on bars and restaurants.
Last week, the government imposed a nighttime curfew from 11 p.m. till 6 a.m. It prompted legal action from local businesses. The court ruled in favour of the businesses, saying there was no evidence bars and restaurants that stick to mask wearing and social distancing contribute to any increase in infection rates. Despite the ruling, some owners aren't happy.
The verdict is a farce. The curfew has been lifted, but from 11 p.m. we're not allowed to sell alcohol.
He says it's about survival.
I'll put it this way. Since we're not only a restaurant, but also a pub, and we normally open until 1 o'clock, it doesn't make sense for us to continue to open after 11 o'clock without serving alcohol, because guests are not coming in for a soft drink, but rather for a beer.
Many other European governments are also imposing curfews and lockdowns, with many local businesses complaining of financial losses. The Berlin Senate has already lodged an appeal against the ruling.
And the America's Cup just got real for the Italian challengers Luna Rossa as they launched their second-generation AC-75 yacht.
The launch came just days after American Magic and British challenger Ineos Team UK started trials with their second-generation boats.
I can't wait to face the other teams in December. I mean, man, it's been 2 years of just wanting to get out there and race. And hey, we've all been going through a crisis really in the world, but it's so great to see some sport starting to happen again.
Jimmy Spithill is a two-time America's Cup champion and is conscious they need to get going fast as they need hours on the racetrack. Every day during trials something is upgraded on the boat. Things that are visible, others not, like systems and software.
There's so much support for Luna Rossa, and we want to do everyone proud. We want to get out there, and I can tell you, all the team here is ready to go.
The teams have 2 months of further trials before a regatta in December. The 36 America's Cup match against Team New Zealand begins on March 6th.
That's all from our UK newsroom for now. Back over to New York.
Thanks, Neil. And coming up, a NASA spacecraft is set to bring some space rocks upon return. It's America's first attempt at bringing asteroid samples back to Earth. And police officers in Egypt have gone viral. That's after a unique showcase of their strength and athleticism in a parade. See them in action after the break. Adobe released a new attribution tool for Photoshop. The company says it hopes it will help people to know if an image is fake or real. The beta feature lets photo editors add extra information to their files. This metadata could include who created the image, how it's been altered, and whether AI tools were used to change it. It will first be available to select users only and for publishing to Adobe's social network platform, Behance. Adobe says over 90% of creative professionals use Photoshop and 23 million use Behance. A NASA spacecraft is circling an ancient asteroid 200 million miles away, and it's about to descend to collect a sample of space rock.
The OSIRIS-REx spacecraft will attempt to reach the boulder-packed surface of asteroid Bennu on Tuesday.
We've been flying OSIRIS-REx now for 4 years, and we are culminating the whole point of this mission is to get this sample of this asteroid.
It will be America's first attempt at collecting asteroid samples for return to Earth. Japan is the only country on Earth to accomplish the feat so far. Scientists want to bring back at least 2 ounces worth of Bennu. That's about a handful. The van-sized spacecraft is aiming for the relatively flat middle of a tennis court-sized crater named Nightingale.
It's a little bit of a diamond shape of an asteroid. It's the smallest body we've ever orbited, and for reference, that diameter is about the height of the Empire State Building.
Building-sized boulders loom over the targeted touchdown area. The samples won't arrive on Earth until 2023.
Egyptian police cadets have gone viral for their show of skill and strength during a parade in their hometown. New recruits to the Egyptian police force performed in front of the country's president during their graduation ceremony outside of Cairo. They showcased their athleticism in unique ways by jumping through a ring of knives and doing push-ups on moving cars. The parade was broadcast on Egyptian TV and has since gone viral. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.